Finding Dory is the newest animated feature brought to us by Disney and Pixar that is also the sequel to Finding Nemo. Now, if you remember from my list for the top 10 most anticipated movies of 2016, Finding Dory was my number 2. And that is because Finding Nemo is one of my favorite movies of all time. I think it is easily one of the best animations we've ever gotten. I saw that movie in theaters when I was around 9 or 10 years old, and I have loved it ever since. Just everything about it. I mean, the characters, the story, the animation, the humor. There is not a human being in the history of the world that has seen Finding Nemo and didn't love it. So as a result, I was super excited for this movie, but a lot of people were also very skeptical towards it simply because it's a sequel. And traditionally speaking, I'm very skeptical towards sequels as well, but seeing how Inside Out came out last year, and I truly felt that movie was a return to form for Pixar, and also in the fact that this movie took a very long time to be made, similar to another great Pixar sequel, Toy Story 3, I had confidence that this movie could also be great. And I'm here to tell you all right now, I do think Finding Dory is a great movie. Now let me explain why. For starters, this movie opens up with a flashback of Dory's childhood, the first of many that we get throughout this movie. We see her with her two parents, Charlie and Jenny, and what I love seeing is how they're trying to help her with her short-term memory loss. They're trying so hard to help her remember things, such as following trails of shells and remembering little songs or poems about what to do and what not to do. We see flashbacks of that throughout this movie, and what I love most about it is it really does truly resemble what a lot of parents who have kids with disabilities have to go through. You know, they want to find various ways to help their kids be able to do things that they may not be able to do because of their disability. And ultimately, they want to find ways to be able to help their kids so that one day they can live on their own and not be affected by their disability. Something that has a lot of parents very scared and very nervous to how that could eventually plan out. It was one of the directions this movie took that I thought was really smart and worked out really well for it. The movie does go on to say, however, how along the way, Dory got separated from her parents and spent the rest of her life trying to find them until she ran into Marlin that led into the events of Finding Nemo, and now she's been living with them. But then one moment comes in particular. Marlin and Dory are sending Nemo off to school. Dory is chosen to tag along as one of the teacher assistants for Mr. Ray, but it's in this moment that we discover that this class is all about seeing Mr. Ray go off with the rest of his stingrays on their migration. And as Mr. Ray is giving this lecture just before he leaves, something finally clicks with Dory. She all of a sudden starts to vaguely remember that she and her parents lived at the Jewel of Morro Bay, California. She asks Marlin and Nemo to come on this adventure with her because she knows she can't do this alone. And Marlin at first is very reluctant to do this because we do see that he is still kind of the same character he was in Finding Nemo, you know, very reluctant, very worrisome. But Marlin, of course, agrees to help Dory on this adventure because he knows what it's like to lose his family. He experienced that in Finding Nemo when Nemo was taken away from him. So after the sea turtle Crush takes them on an ocean current that leads them to California, and after avoiding being eaten by a giant squid, they finally make it to California. And it's in this moment Dory gets captured by the volunteers from the nearby Marine Life Institute. And this place is basically a rehabilitation center for marine animals. You know, they bring them in, they help them overcome what disabilities or what issues they might have, and then they release them back into the wild. Dory is eventually sent to the quarantine section of this institute where she is introduced to Hank the octopus. Now I'm going to get into this right now. There were a lot of new characters in this movie, but Hank was hands down my favorite one. Because I really like what Hank was as a character. I mean, he's very ill-tempered, he's very impatient, he's very sarcastic. And the fact that he's paired up with someone like Dory who's always forgetting things, it makes for some really good comedic moments in this movie. It's at this point Hank tells Dory that she is in fact in the Jewel of Morro Bay, California. And as a result, Dory's able to connect with another memory, and she's able to deduce that she comes from the open ocean exhibit in this Marine Life Institute. And it's in this moment Hank decides to help Dory get back to her parents in the open ocean exhibit if she gives him the tag that's going to send her to a permanent aquarium in Cleveland. Because Hank has stated that due to traumatic experiences from the past of living in the ocean, he doesn't want to go back there. He just wants to spend his life in solitary in an aquarium. So now the two of them go off on their own little adventure to get to the open ocean exhibit, and here's where the movie only gets better. Because at this moment, we're introduced to a lot more new characters, notably Destiny the whale shark and Bailey the beluga whale. Yeah, it turns out Destiny was a childhood friend of Dory. She's actually the reason Dory knows how to speak whale. And what I like seeing with Destiny and Bailey is this movie really shows what this Marine Life Institute does for animals. Because this movie plays on the disabilities that these two characters have and how this Marine Life Institute is trying to get them back into the wild. Destiny is nearsighted, so she doesn't really know how to swim very far. Bailey has a head injury, and that makes him think he's not able to use his echolocation anymore. But we also got some really funny moments here too. In particular, one where Dory and Hank have to make through this pool where kids are allowed to touch the animals. But what I love is you see it from the animals' perspective of kids just grabbing at them and poking at them and how it's just really scarring and traumatic for them. It makes you stop and think when you see it, and you're just like, yeah, I can understand why that would be really scarring. No wonder Hank wants to leave this place. And then what's also funny is we get back to Marlin and Nemo, and they're trying to get into the Institute to go after Dory. And these two sea lions tell them that the only way they can get into that Institute is if they can get this really stupid loon named Becky to fly them into there. And what is a really funny, and you can tell very annoying struggle for Marlin in particular, they're able to get into the Institute with the help of Becky. Now the movie gets back to Dory. We discover that she's finally made it to the open ocean exhibit, but there is absolutely no sign of her parents. And again, right here, Dory's able to recall another memory from her past about how she ended up getting separated from her parents. She learns that she wandered too far from her parents, and as a result, she got sucked into one of the drains in the Marine Life Institute that led her into the ocean. And it really makes you feel for Dory in this moment because she stops and she realizes to herself that she is the reason that she got separated from her parents. She got lost because of her own fault. It shows how frustrated and upset she is over having her disability that is short-term memory loss. But it's also in this moment that two of the crabs that are in this exhibit, they tell Dory that all of the blue tails were moved into quarantine. And Dory knows that the only way she can get to them is if she goes into that same pipe. And although she's nervous about it, she's afraid she's going to forget the directions again, she ultimately decides to go forth with it because she's not going to let her memory stop her from reuniting with her parents. It's a moment of great determination for Dory, and it just makes you want to root for her more. Especially once she reunites with Nemo and Marlin in these pipes, and Bailey discovers he's able to use his echolocation again to help them find their way. Echolocation was really cool to see in this movie too, just how Bailey is able to use his mind to detect where other things might be from a much farther distance. So as a result, Bailey is able to guide Dory, Marlin, and Nemo into quarantine where they reunite with all of the blue tails that are there. But it's in this moment the blue tails tell Dory that once Dory went missing, her parents went out and went looking for her, and no one has seen them since. And in this case, Dory assumes, and we all assume, that that just means they passed away. It hits Dory emotionally, it hits us emotionally, but it's also in this moment where things go that much worse. Because it turns out all of the blue tails are being shipped to that aquarium in Cleveland. Hank's only able to rescue Dory. He couldn't save Marlin and Nemo from it. And from all of this, Dory ends up back in the ocean while Marlin and Nemo are now on a truck to Cleveland. So Dory's now just swimming through the ocean. She has no idea what to do on her own at this point. Until she notices a new trail of shells. She remembers that her parents always told her that if she gets lost, just follow a trail of shells to find her way home. And at the end of this trail, she is reunited with her parents. It's a really nice, awesome, happy moment. They reveal to Dory that after they couldn't find her in quarantine, they went into the ocean to go find her. And they just knew that if they spent years forming a big trail of shells that they would eventually find her. But Dory's not able to celebrate for long. She knows she still has to find a way to save Marlin and Nemo. So as a result, she goes back to Destiny and Bailey. She's able to get them to break free from their enclosures. And now through Bailey's echolocation, they're able to track down where the truck is. They swim after it. They're able to get Dory back into the truck. In this moment, Dory is able to find Nemo and Marlin, and she's also able to convince Hank to come back into the ocean, telling him that life shouldn't be about solitary. It should be about freedom and chance, something he does agree with. Now it's all about finding a way to get back into the ocean. So they just basically have Hank hijack the truck and just drive it straight into it. This frees all the animals that were in that truck. Everyone is now free to live the rest of their lives in the ocean. Dory and her parents, they all return with Marlin and Nemo to the Great Barrier Reef to live there. And it's also at this point Hank is now teaching Mr. Ray's class as his substitute teacher, with Bailey and Destiny as his teaching assistant. nonsense. So all in all, if you ask me, I thought Finding Dory was a pretty great movie. I just love the character of Dory. She's one of my favorite characters from movies of all time. I think she's one of the best supporting characters you've ever had in movies. We saw that in Finding Nemo. And here she shows in Finding Dory that she can be a great lead character, which is awesome. That doesn't happen a lot when you try to make supporting characters the new leads, but here it worked out. Marlin and Nemo are awesome. The new characters in this movie are great. I loved Dory's parents. I loved seeing how they were trying everything they could in these flashbacks to help Dory overcome short-term memory loss. And Hank, as I said, hands down my favorite new character in this movie. I loved his humor. I loved his story. I loved his chemistry with Dory. I also really love seeing how he's able to use his camouflage to basically move freely throughout the Institute. I thought that was really cool. The movie had great humor, great heart, a great lesson. That lesson being is if you have some kind of disability, don't let that stop you. Don't let that stop you from achieving what you want to achieve. Don't let that make you think that you are incapable of doing it compared to someone who may not have a disability. The animation in this movie is beautiful. I mean, Pixar continues to show that they have not lost it when it comes to that. The only gripes that I personally have with this movie is, number one, I do wish we could have seen at least a few more of the old characters from Finding Nemo. I get that they want to pave the way for newer characters in this movie, but I do wish they could have done what they at least did with Crush and maybe at least include some of the older characters for at least a little while. And also number two, the movie didn't hit me as hard emotionally as I was hoping it would. There were quite a few moments that did hit me emotionally, but there were some that I knew were trying to, but for me, I just didn't quite feel it. I mean, I can watch Finding Nemo, and all the emotional moments in that movie that are meant to be emotional, they hit me. So yeah, that's another thing to mention. This movie is definitely not as good as Finding Nemo, but despite all of that, Finding Dory is still a very, very enjoyable movie. It's the perfect family movie that's out right now. Kids will love it, adults will enjoy it, and I will say this right now. If Pixar decides to make Finding Nemo a trilogy, I would not be opposed to that because it's already got 2 good ones under its belt. So that's all I gotta say, guys. Thank you so much for watching my video. Don't forget to leave a comment, like, subscribe, and I will see you all next time.